good morning. I am privileged to have Hemant Gupta with me once again. Hemant, welcome to one more round of random contemplations.
Thanks, Bunty. It's always co-discovery and co-sensing.
Yeah, I'm yet to internalize this co-discovery thing in my head. But I think it's a natural thing. If two people get together, obviously it's always going to be something from one end to the other and the other end to this. Uh, Thank you for that reminder. And today I was thinking that the piece that I received from you a couple of days back, uh, micro and macro, and that kind of set me thinking that this is a perpetual thought that one keeps having, that is one too small in the scheme of things, uh, or is one really having the power to be a good instrument of nature, life, God, whatever one wants to call it, or even as an individual agency, are we powerful enough? So, okay, I'll start with on a contentious note in that sense. Um, all the political happenings around the world right now, the country, Palestine, Ukraine, uh, or other countries which are going through their own ups and downs economically, uh, how do you see an individual play any kind of role? Because the numbers are mammoth, the task is huge. How does me, as a person who thinks that he wants to contribute to the force of ABC, I'm not going into goodness or this right now, but if I want to contribute, how do I contribute to changing the world in a way that I would want to see it?
It's a it's a uh, it's a beautiful invocation, Bunty. I'm actually reminded of listening to a podcast where there was this guy who's a neurohacker called Jamie Wheal, if I'm getting the name right. And he mentioned he was citing an interesting thing called the Stockdale paradox. Apparently, there is this story of a wartime situation, maybe about World War II, when when inside the prison, the prisoners of wars uh, did not know the fate of what they are going to be, or are they going to be in time in the near future, or are they going to be executed? And he said that there were the optimists and the pessimists. Uh, 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 but he said that the real guys who really made it through had the following feature: realistic about the immediate and relentlessly optimistic about the future. And that he says is one of the principles or feature that we can all draw from. And if we go a little deeper into what he meant was that, in this conversation, let's say there are 8 billion people on the planet right now, right this very minute. And each of them are, there is nighttime somewhere, there's daytime somewhere, there's excess food on the table to some people. There would be people who are wondering when they'll get their next meal. All kinds of people are right now here on the planet. And the question is, what can you and I do? And I think the least that we can do is that when we are interacting with each other, are we increasing kleshas between the two of us, or parikrama between the two of us? So what I mean by klesha is half knowledge, or the arrogance of knowledge, or being too egoistic in this conversation, or belittling you maybe. If I belittle you, all of that would be maybe. Or so asmita, vidya, rag, dvesha, abhinivesha, the kleshas. Rag is desire, dvesh is jealousy, and abhinivesh is, the constant decay of the body and the eventuality, the mortality that we do not stare at most of the time. And if those are driving this conversation, or this is what is giving rise to our interaction, so I can be mindful if I'm giving rise to more kleshas, or I'm being more authentic, I'm more joyful with you, I'm compassionate, I'm friendly to you, and I hold Vivek to contribute and see how your contributions are. That at least we can do. So that's the least that we can do. And I think everything else builds on the top of just doing this simple things right over a period of time can do a tsunami of difference to our personal lives and people around. So that's my initial intuition, Bunty.
I had a question running in my head, but the depth of your answer actually changed that question. I'm finding that the new question has far more depth. So we'll go with this for now. So basically, you're saying the inner world has to be taken care of even before we start thinking about the outer world. Can this be the conclusion that one can draw from what you shared?
Yes, and there is something just we can build on that. So imagine we say that the unit of observation is self. The unit of observation is the space between us. The unit of observation is my immediate family, your immediate family. The unit of observation is my society, my neighborhood, your neighborhood. The unit of observation is community I belong to, community you belong to. The unit of observation is the state. So we can look at it from various conceptual observation filters, right up to civilization, individual inner space, family, friends, neighborhood, state, nation, species, interspecies, planet. If you can see what's happening in these scales, uh, I think it is the case that each unit has a certain existence, but also certain extinction event. At any given point of time, if at any of the stage uh, it becomes degenerative, it has cascading effect on a lot of things. Uh, so in that sense, I think we need to be we need to look at things. How am I regenerative about myself? How am I regenerative about the space between the two of us? How are we being regenerative about our families and stuff? So sometimes sometimes some of us may require us ourselves to be completely withdrawing from the society, or stonewalling, or just creating boundaries and not being interactive. Maybe that's the journey, and sometimes that's what is called in for, because मेरे पास जो होगा वही मैं आपको दे पाऊंगा, मेरे पास जो है नहीं मैं आपको दे ही नहीं पाऊंगा. और अगर मैं आपको झूठा दिलासा दूं और झूठा प्यार दूं, maybe sometimes it works, but I don't think it works on a sustained basis. So हम अपने आप को जितना रीजनरेटिव करेंगे, क्लेशा और परिक्रमा को मतलब keeping a balance with, yeah, keeping an awareness, absolutely, and then trying to see how we can be more regenerative, then and becoming aware over a period of time. अगर मैं regenerative हो गया हूं तो कई बार मुझे ये भी देखना होगा कि इससे उस स्केल पे कुछ कर सकता हूँ क्या, मैं नेबरहुड के स्केल पे कुछ कर सकता हूँ जैसे आप कर रहे हैं. Like you're doing this wonderful thing for the last 3-4 years. It's fascinating, the bunch of your, the few of you come together every Saturday and create some wonderful recipes and share it with our fellow human beings. That's the thing, that you're trying to move the neighborhood into a regenerative scale by doing that movement. And I think at each scale, these filters, these entities, they're surviving because every other scale uh, has some element where they're trying to be कुछ गलत भी हो रहा है, कुछ कॉस्ट भी बेयर कर रहे हैं, बट वो ओके है, इट इज सर्वाइविंग देयर. वो एक लेवल नीचे चले जाएगा तो शायद वो ब्रेकडाउन हो सकता है. सो आई डोंट नो वेदर आई एड्रेस्ड योर क्वेश्चन, बंटी.
You have not only addressed the question that I asked you, you also kind of preempted the question that was rising in my head. I want to set a context before I come to the question. So if I understood you correctly, if I have this continuous awareness, or at least a con- consciously good amount of awareness about what I am doing with myself and my mind and my body all the time, there are chances that I will start to know a little more about the mind and the body and come to a reasonable amount of mastery over subject that I choose because of awareness. Okay, when I'm angry, I'm like this. When I'm kind, I'm like this. Or when I'm fearful, I'm like this. Uh, if I'm able to either combine or disassociate myself from the topic at hand, what is causing this, and just observing myself as a unit, like you rightly mentioned. So the observation is a little more detached because I need to understand what is really happening. If I keep continuing being carried away by the circumstance that is causing it, then there is no end to it because everything is evolving every moment. So something or the other may happen that I may like in the morning and I may dislike in the evening. So I cannot be binding myself to that event. I would rather look at the unit that I've taken for consideration, which is my mind and my body, and I keep studying it. I'm explaining. If any place you feel that I'm wrong or I've misunderstood what you're saying, just correct me there. So this is the first unit. Because I have been doing it reasonably well and reasonably long, I start to see a few patterns of what makes me me. And then I choose whichever side I want to be. Again, I'm not getting into the duality of good and bad. I may decide that playing sports is good and not bothering about work is good. So I may get good at sports and suddenly start earning through sports. Or else I may decide that academically I want to do well and not bother, and I may do well there. Or a mix of two, or there are zillions of possibilities that can happen getting two things together or separate. But I'm saying the constant study makes me good at something. Once I become good at something, consciously so, then I am starting to uh, impact the circle around me, which you call the neighborhood or our family or our friends, um, like you gave our example. Because even while you were saying it, the awe of looking at it as an individual, I was saying, yes, man, like we have 5, 7 people, and suddenly maybe there are 8,000, 10,000 meals we have distributed so far. And suddenly the whole mammoth task that if you were to tell me, come, let's get together and give away 10,000 meals, I'll say, are you out of your mind? Never going to happen. What are you talking? But every week, week after week, you're just sitting and doing a small thing, having fun with it. I want to talk about process there because the process itself is equally important. The process is of detachment. None of us, while we are all passionate about doing this, none of us is very arrogant or stuck to any kind of thing. We are, if there is one principle, it is that we should all have fun and the food should be good or tasty. There is no other principle per se. So people come in, there are people who want to join, people who want to. Or last week, a funny thing happened. I was buying potatoes and that guy said, I have not charged you as per market rate. I said, yes, you know, we do this for langar. I generally tend to use it langar as a term because people understand it. Um, so there was a lady standing and she said, how can I contribute? She didn't know me from Adam. She took my number. She said, can I come and cook? And being a lady, she didn't share her number. She took my number, and which is fine. But it was such uh, it's a blessing. So I am aware of who I am. I am aware of my part in this small group that I am of. There are other guys getting impacted this way or that. Now suddenly, suppose this becomes replicable, like you've been mentioning a couple of times, that other people can start doing this if we were to start it as a movement, that 5 friends get together and start doing this wherever you are. So then we start affecting a smaller place like an entire village or a town or a city. So there are 20 such groups or 50 such groups that get formed. We suddenly get famous and people start writing, and we, as in all the 50 groups, the city gets famous for feeding its hungry. So, what I was trying to say is that one person, one neighborhood, one village, one town, one country, the world, the universe. Uh, I also now want to contextualize. I used to collect quotes earlier in a diary, and for the longest time, I used to do that. And one of them was some Chinese saying that if I want to change the world, I must first change my country. If I want to first change my country, then I must change my town. If I want to change my town, I need to change my neighborhood. And funnily enough, now that I remember, because every time you were using the word regenerative, I was not too sure whether I understood it correctly. But this quote ended with, if I must change the world, I must first regenerate myself. And this is obviously not verbatim, but it had a huge impact on me in terms of what individual agency can do to the rest of the world. I will also want to bring formally on record one problem with this is that there are days you will still feel bad. Individual agency does not mean that you are carrying a flag and saying every day you're going to feel very enthusiastic and passionate about it. There are days when you are going to be a little dismal and unhappy and sad at the human condition, at your own condition. You may not be as perfectly pure in your wanting things properly. But I think over a period of time, the sense of awareness can lead to okay, one little lovely idea that just came to me. Once we were sitting and meditating, a couple of us friends, and we finished that 1 hour of sitting and we were walking down the stairs. We were on the second floor somewhere. And there is general sense of well-being that happens even if you have been unhappy before you start the sitting. There is a mild reduction in whatever you were feeling very intense about. So I landed up being very enthusiastic. I told my friend, I said, what a wonderful thing it is. The whole world is on fire. The Buddha is right. The world is burning. But one little piece, one little 2 foot by 2 foot cushion is trying its best to find peace in a world that is set ablaze. And this very need to find peace for oneself and for others, because you are actually becoming a little non-attached to yourself and anything else. You're trying to observe. What a wonderful thing it is. It's the ultimate rebellion in the world that every day you decide that you're going to sit 1 hour and not let things overwhelm you. And that to me was a revelation for myself. So I don't have a particular question, but I've kind of tried to analyze what you said and contextualize it with my limited experience. You've been making notes, so I'm hoping you will say something that will lead to another question soon enough.
Yes, Bunty. I think one thing that I came across when I was writing the book was this whole idea of change. Uh, and I asked myself, if I were to just do a simple exercise, sit down and bring to awareness people that I met in the last, let's say, 1 month, and or people that I meet very frequently. And if I ask a question, okay, what are those? So these people are giving me feedback. Feedback is, this is not right, this is not good, you need to change this. Why don't you do this? Why don't you change this? Right. So there are change projects that people are directly, indirectly telling me to undertake. It could be simple things like habits or, and if we ask this question to 8 billion people, I'm sure everybody would have some changes that they are being asked to make in their self by their immediate family, their neighbors, or maybe, professional spaces. And let's just assume that, there are these 10, everybody has 10 change projects, 10 recommendations from different people that they need to change in themselves, right? So there's that. I'm sure some of the people might on their own might be thinking, I need to do this, I need to become healthy, I need to do this. So there are some change projects that come voluntarily. So assuming just at this basic level, 8 billion people into 10, 80 billion change projects stand on the planet right now. And across the different products, the market space where we're talking brand or where we're talking politics, when we're talking policies or society in terms of cultural norms, again, there are a lot of change projects, acceptances and rejections of sorts. So I think we are in a hyper change environment right now, or a hyper change desired environment right now, where I think we're losing sight of uh, what we have and what we have accomplished as individuals, as family, as neighborhood, as society, as civilization. And my worry is that our hunt for the wrong is hurting our ability to appreciate what's already right.
Can you repeat the last line?
Our hunt for the wrong is hurting our ability to appreciate what's already right. And the worry is that whenever we reach the next stage of change, whether in self or others, whether commanded by self or others, what will we do with that change too? Because today we stand on the shoulders of several change projects.
Yeah.
What are we doing with those changes? Right. So I think there is this awareness shift that we need to bring and become aware of. So that's one. How do we tone down this hyper change tendencies in each other? Of course, not to say that we should not stop. We should now, all of us should go home and stop desiring change in each other. That's not the point. The point is to become that this is what we're becoming, and is this really what we want? The second thing that emerged for me was, I think it connects to the first question that you raised. I mean, whatever I'm doing, as in whatever you're doing, am I too small? And is it making a significant difference? I think that there is a 2x2 kind of thing that definitely gets invoked. So imagine on the x-axis you have local problem, global problem, and on the y-axis you have local solution and global solution. Now, there are some things which are local problem, local solution, local problem, global solution, global problem, global solution, global problem, local solution. If we meditate that, we might find certain entries in each of them. I think there are some things very fundamental about the fabric of humanity and civilization, where I think a lot of work needs to be done locally. And the word local could mean self, local could mean interpersonal, local could mean neighborhood. In the hyper change environment and a hyper rejection environment, hyper judgment environment, hyper expressive environment, hyper anxious environment, hyper insecure environment, we need to be able to cultivate the opposite of these, and which would come from practices of compassion, gratitude, awe, acceptance, random acts of kindness, and uh, those we can keep doing. And I mean, the idea is not what happens because of what. I think there's some actions to which you cannot directly lay that this action is going to lead to a particular consequence. But I think there are tipping points that happen over a period of time if you do it on a sustained basis. So that was the second thing that was coming to my mind. That and this is connected to what I think what Swami Vivekananda perhaps meant towards the later stages of his life, when he lamented that he could not see, or he saw the deprivation of the concepts of Satshakti and Sangatan. Satshakti is your own conviction of the right and the good, irrespective of the world is, how the world sees it, because you believe in it. So I think that's another important thing. I mean, if I fundamentally believe that 8 billion people would be on the other side and I would stand alone, if I fundamentally believe in the idea, I would keep doing it. Whether somebody acknowledges, corresponds, synchronizes, that doesn't, I mean, that's where the power of my Sat Shakti comes in. Um, and I think there was the last point is, uh, I think in the information age, the knowledge age, the conversation age that we are in, uh, a lot of times there is this whole idea of idea itself, or the whole idea of brainstorming itself, or planning, right? Strategy. And if we see a lot of these things actually allude that a lot of thinking has to go, or a lot of thinking actually goes before you start doing. So thinking first and action later. There's an interesting quote from somebody, I'm not recalling the name, that you cannot think your way into new ways of acting, but you can act your ways into new ways of thinking.
What
So I
an
think that,
amazing quote that is.
yeah. Uh, so I don't recall किनका है ये, but I think we can definitely plug in later. Uh,
Yeah.
तो कई बार ना, I think too much of thinking leads to action paralysis also, and sometimes action gives its own. In fact, there is another quote. I think this comes from the founders of the Farnham Street podcast. Um Action creates progress, and progress creates motivation. uh, the popular perception is पहले motivation होगा तो काम करेंगे, right? But this one says no, action will give you that progress and motivation. So just start acting, and it will give you your own set of convictions and what to do later. So I'll rest it here.
You give many questions and then you erase them. But one lovely thing that you said, kind of again preempted what was my question. So off late, it's very, very recent due to the new initiative that I'm trying to get into, where I'm trying to help people get my commitment to be paid for, uh, which took a long time coming in terms of understanding how I wanted to position it. Um, I I'm obviously blessed because every second call is blessing me, and these podcasts seem to have had a very positive impact on people. They call up and they say things that I do not expect them to say, and it's amazing. One thing that keeps coming back vis-a-vis knowledge is that why don't I get a professional degree in this field? Uh, do some course that will ratify that I'm good enough to do this, what I am planning to do. Uh, not to say that I did not think about all of this. I did pursue a bit of thought. I spoke to people who are doing this on the field. I also spoke to somebody who has given me one of the best compliments for the podcast ever. That person is a very knowledgeable person, very, very uh, well settled abroad in a corporate environment, and is an advisor to some big companies in that sense. Somebody I look up to and respect, somebody of your stature of thought in a way, where I can talk and understand that the global nature of ideas is understood, and invasive nature of our personal agency, how it can be brought about, and all those kinds of things. He landed up saying that they had a huge he and his wife had a huge incident in their lives, which was irrevocable. Had to do something with a loved one's death, and he said, I went to people who were professionals, and I did not find any peace there. But when I spoke to you on the podcast, I felt I went and told my wife that it is resolved in my head now. I'm at peace. And when he told this to me personally, I said, but if I remember your podcast correctly, we never spoke of that issue, or we never bothered about going into your personal life. It was a completely professional episode, and we spoke about your work and your approach to work. He landed up saying, it's the first time in my life I felt heard. And that kind of was a compliment that I was shaken up, because this is a guy that doesn't use his words very loosely. And I look up to him, and he's a Like he would have been an example of a balanced, good guy, knowledgeable in the old Indian style, like very wise and therav wala banda. So I kind of re-looked at myself in my context as a podcaster. Is this what I can manage to do? And am I doing this often enough? I did realize, I have always realized this, that I listen better on the podcast than I do in real life, perhaps sometimes. But over a period, it has become my conscious effort to understand where you're coming from, because I have to accept your humanity and your point of view even before I build upon it. So I'm rarely reacting and canceling you out. Even if I disagree, I'm trying to see where are you coming from? Where is that space that is um, human or has a relevant approach or view? And then try and see if I can match you there and perhaps course correct if I feel very strongly that it needs to be course corrected in my head at least. So coming back, there is this whole thing of late, like the last 1.5, 2 months for sure, I have been very sure that I want to find more about myself and what I want to do rather than be colored by what is coming in. What is coming in keeps coming in. So if I'm talking to Hemant on what I should do, Hemant has a point of view. Or even if I'm not asking and I'm pitching my service to you, okay, if you know of people that I can help, just help me out there. So Hemant lands up saying, I think you should get a degree or something, and I take it on. I will try and answer you. You can ask me twice or thrice, and 2 or 3 times I do answer you, and with the same respect that I give you the first time. But after the third time, I'm more clear that maybe you're just trying to induce a point of view that I have already worked upon. And presently, I do not see a need. I have I have my reasons. I think it kills my empathy whenever I know or I come from a project. I didn't want to start the podcast sheerly for this one reason, that I was very cocky about what I knew. So my question to my friend who was with me when we were brainstorming about this, I said, I don't want to become another guru on the block. He says, you just got to remember that you don't know. And that kind of resolved it forever. I never have to worry anymore. Whenever I come on the podcast, I am no longer the guy who knows better than you. It has never happened. Sheerly because he gave me that one thing, you remember that you don't know. So I do remember that I don't know, and I'm sure about that. So my question to you specifically, if you want to build upon it or react to it, is that I think individual agency is the one that should be concentrated most upon in terms of going in depth on where you stand, what you stand on matters of values, ethics, your spirit of service, what you want to be, even what you want to be portrayed as, if that is important to you, how you want to do it. All of these things are big questions by themselves. And while the world is what it is and it will continue happening, unless you are reasonably clear about where you stand, and this will keep evolving. It's not that you are cast in stone kind of, you find those 10 commandments, that it will never happen henceforth. But some of them do happen like that as well. That if I decide that, okay, I'm not going to ever uh, lie, cheat, um, then chances are that you will stick to it. Obviously, sometimes threadbare discussions and analysis sometimes kills the whole thought itself because you then get confused. But 9 out of 10 times it is useful to um, keep the camera lens on yourself and then keep operating, uh, so that your this sense of awareness is always guiding you. I want to know your thoughts on this because you did cover that, and I was smiling that you are today preempting all the questions. But this is a very strong attempt I'm trying to do that. Good or bad is another story. Fail or pass in my attempt to do it is also a different thing. Sometimes I miserably fail. Sometimes I'm completely given into whatever, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Ahankar, whatever arises, it arises, and I'm in the flow, as good or as bad as anyone. But the attempt is to know more than even judge or be. One little thing I want to just add to the context is that I try and do rather than what you said. Um, think about it too much. A bit of pre-thinking happens. Okay, this is how I want to. Then I jump into it, and then I keep on swimming and trying to find out how it works. So please, sorry that was quite long, but it's about one thing: personal agency.
So, um, just before you shared what you did, Bunty, I think the quote that I was sharing, I just wanted to get it right. I don't know whether I got it right. It said you cannot think your way into new ways of acting, but you can certainly act your way into new ways of thinking. So that's the right quote, and I think that's the quote that I made. I was a little jumbled up whether I made that as a quote or something else. So basically the essence is not to think too much. It is
Yeah,
not saying not to think too much every time. It's just that you need
yeah,
to be
but
aware of.
don't be fearful because you've thought so much about it that you are unable to take a step.
Yeah. Um, Coming to the idea of agency, Bunty, I think the one thing that is always a red flag for me is whenever there are binaries in question, I just hold myself a little back and I say, why are these coming across as binaries? You know, agency versus, let's say, determinism, or free will versus determinism. That's been a thing for a long, long period of time in human history. Um, uh, in the writing of the book, we came across a few things that we call as devices that we use in our thinking to better our thinking. So whenever we come across binaries, we try to use the following device, which is agencies are embedded in agency, non-agencies are embedded in non-agency, agencies are embedded in non-agency, and non-agencies are embedded in agency. So it's such a complex it's such a complex thing in our existence that um that it's not a binary, uh, and there are some kind of elasticity available, and that elasticity comes not just from one's inner space but also outside. Um,
Yeah.
in fact, there are now schools of thought and systems thinking and complexity thinking where they believe that the idea is not agency but interagency.
Yeah.
So, how we are negotiating agency. So, I'm influencing your agency, is influencing my agency, is influencing your agency. I'm constraining your agency, or constraining my agency is constraining your agency. I'm facilitating your agency, is facilitating my agency, is facilitating your agency. So you can see there is reciprocity and interagency. Similarly, things around me, the table, the mobile phone, the pen, the paper, they all have enablement of certain agency with me, what I can do with them and what I cannot do with them. So it's an interagency again. And then there are norms, norms that we follow or rules we follow of interactions. Even they facilitate or constrain the agencies. So, um, so to that extent, I believe that I would love to go on the turf of interagency and see what can be done in the interagency space to uh, to enable people a better journey. Um, there was the aspect of knowing, knowing oneself. Um, there are advances happening in the cognition space. Like there is a model that people talk about in cognitive science called the 4P model, which is there are four kinds of knowledge: propositional knowledge, procedural knowledge, participatory knowledge, perspectival knowledge. Propositional knowledge is something that I can put it in words, and it answers the question what. Procedural knowledge is largely, the procedure. It answers the question how. Perspectival knowledge is when I take perspective of the other. It builds on a perspective. And participatory is the knowledge that actually gets jammed in, co-discovered, co-created when we participate in some way, either with things or rules, norms, incentives, or people. I think somewhere in the last 100 years, knowledge came to be mono-indexed around language, propositional knowledge. There's time to go back to embodied knowledge and a whole lot of other kind of knowledge that that intermeshes with the knowledge, and that's where a lot of times uh, uh, just knowing something doesn't really translate into its doing. For example, if I walk down the street and ask the next 10 person randomly, what do you think is a healthy life? I'm sure some of them will give some overlapping answers. Chalna chahiye, sona chahiye, pani pina chahiye, अच्छा khana chahiye, all of that, right? I mean, broadly, I'm saying. Or you may have social relations, you should have friends to talk to, kind of thing. Um, Having the knowledge doesn't translate into health. It has to be acted upon, right? So a lot of people have a lot of knowledge, but that having the knowledge doesn't embody it. For the embodiment of it, it comes through sustained set of actions. So that's the second bit that came to my mind. And lastly, I'm reminded of the IITian turned monk Swami Atmapriyananda, um, who was once giving a discourse on, a lot of people try to look for the knowledge that will liberate them from all kinds of ignorance. Uh, the knowledge of marketing liberates you from ignorance of marketing. The knowledge of sales liberates you from the ignorance of sale. Knowledge of anything can liberate you from anything. But what is that knowledge that will liberate you from everything? And his point was that after a deep, long, sustained quest, there comes a point of immersion and surrender, and you know. And that knowing is very different than the knowing that we can exchange and make the others know.
Asking questions after this kind of answer is difficult. I have a random question running in my head for a long time during the sharing that you were doing. But one little understanding that came to me, my mind wandered a bit in middle of your answer. And when it wandered, I brought it back and I was hearing you. This brought me back to what I was sharing earlier, that the listening becomes useful only when I'm listening to the word and the context that is being said. Although I had lost my way into what you were saying because of whatever thought must have come at that point of time, then making a conscious effort to listen to you, it brought me back to what you were saying. Thankfully, I did not lose my way when you said the last two lines, which were quite fundamentally close to what I've been wanting to ask you. So, allow me the use of many superficial words to explain this thought. It is very difficult for me to explain, but I'm trying. So, this is this dot that is me. Okay. Full of whatever you mentioned, all the quadrants and the inputs and outputs and expressions and thoughts and awareness and everything. There is this thought that is me. I sometimes read stuff that the Tao says that it is against Buddhism because Buddhism has too many do's and don'ts and freedom and limitation and those kind of things. And the monks have to go through a entire uh, living thesis of limiting oneself mindfully to arrive at the answers which are natural. Uh, I'm just putting it in my words. Nobody says it like that, but for me to explain myself here. So the Tao says that one needs to respond to the moment as it occurs. To me, there is no conflict with Buddhism because I think that's what they are also trying to reach. Even if I follow the Tao, I don't think overnight I become like that. And although all kinds of enlightenment happens overnight only, uh, over moment actually, what overnight, but the effort is definitely there because you're cleaning, and sometimes it may be spring cleaning, sometimes it may be deep cleaning, sometimes it may be uh, a conscious effort at not creating more dirt inside. So there are various ways. It's a human effort, and irrespective of all that we know, we are individuals. So Hemant may talk about a lot of things on camera, but when he goes to do it, it may not be exactly the way he proposes he does it. Because on the spur of the moment, his own tendencies may work against him, or uh, on the spur of the moment, there might be this new insight that is driving him to do a new thing completely. And he's just finished his podcast 5 minutes back, but he realizes, no, it doesn't work like that anymore. So it's a very evolutionary thing. It's not uh, like the phrase I use, cast in stone. It keeps evolving. And this evolution itself is an answer of sorts, because you're changing with change and accepting the change and responding to change and growing up from change. And again, that growing up becomes redundant. And again, you're growing up from that moment. So while there is a pattern there is no pattern at all. It is, you are just a force of nature being living that quote unquote life in the moment and vibrating with that knowledge. And sometimes you may come up with two by twos, sometimes you may not, sometimes you may be randomly emotional about it, sometimes you may be absolutely rational to the point of quote unquote death. That's what it is, because the final. But like Swamiji said, and you quoted, that at the end of it all, there is this immersion. And I want to ask you and also mention that I feel this immersion at times. Like I will know everything. In fact, one thing that I want to clarify, that very often you feel that I instinctively understand and say these things on the podcast, and you're very glad to hear them. And but if you were to ask me, I would not know any of this. The only thing that I genuinely offer is that I respect you and the interchange that we have. Uh, and I sit there and work from a spirit of that. Because without that, we will not be able to live that moment like fully. If I, like when I lost you for that one line or two lines, I lost you, then I cannot really claim that I know what happened in those moments. But I do know what happened in the moments with me. And then mindfully chose to come back. But those two moments are gone. I can think whatever I want about them. I can claim to be, oh, but this was, your answer was very long-winded, or I was unable to pay attention. Whatever I blame or not, those things have gone. The facticity of that living is the beauty part of it. I cannot hang myself for not paying attention. I can only wake up when I decide I want to wake up. Meanwhile, the slumber continues in varied ways, perhaps. So, my question to you obviously is that perhaps all of the answers that you and I are giving emanate from the same source and keep vibrating to and fro into various expressions, because of what people call God, for example, is omnipresent and omniscient and uh, ageless, timeless, Akal Purkh, like it's called in Sikhism. It's not bound by time or space. And this is what it actually means. It is vibrating in its own liveliness, goes, dies, awakens, dies, awakens, dies, awakens. And the moment we, for those few moments that we by chance are able to immerse in it, maybe the Swamijis immerse in it for a longer period of time or for the longest period of time, and that's how they are able to study it better. But anybody who walks on this cannot go empty handed. Something or the other will come to you. And it is not because of some great benefit that is given to us. It is just the benefit of genuine inquiry. Perhaps. This is what I've been thinking. You've already written one or two notes. So what do you? I am today thankful that you're writing something. I don't seem to be making coherent questions up for sure.
No, one of the expressions that I use just to your absolute last statement that you made, Bunty, is I genuinely believe everything is integrated in some way.
Yeah.
तो वो कोहेरेंस मतलब वो है भी और नहीं भी, but that's okay. I think वो है. Some things emerged for me as you were sharing, Bunty. One is long back I had come to this quote from Oscar Wilde that the easiest way to get rid of temptation is to yield to it. एंड फिर शायद मैंने बुक में इसको जिक्र किया है कि अच्छा यील्ड एक है और दूसरा है ऑस्टेरिटी, कि आप यील्ड नहीं करें, और अगर it grows, it diminishes. So sometimes it is the case, sometimes you yield to things and it grows, it doesn't yield, it doesn't reduce, it grows. फिर आपको कुछ और चाहिए या वो ज्यादा चाहिए आपको. Sometimes because you yielded, you've understood, अब वो नहीं चाहिए आपको, कम भी नहीं चाहिए आपको. और कभी कभी बिकॉज यू आर ऑस्टियर टूवर्ड्स इट, दैट थिंग ग्रोज, बिकॉज वो विरह हो जाता है, एकदम विरह हो जाता है, वैराग्य नहीं हो पाता. और कभी कभी ऑस्टेरिटी से वो अपने आप ही अंदर मर जाता है, फिर वो उसको. तो आई थिंक एज अ ह्यूमन बीइंग वी हैव ऑल फोर quadrants of experience, just that we are not aware of them. And one of my missions since those 2x2 grids is, I think, because we do not have the awareness of these nuances, we hold on to a few quadrants and then exchange them through the day, through relationships and stuff. तो एक तो ये चीज, is yielding the way or is austerity the way? And I think across the world there have been different philosophies and credos that have championed both the sides. The second thought that came to me was, एक है aspect of realization and aspect of actualization. So I believe that many people on the planet would have got epiphanies and realizations. Struggled in life is actualization. To integrate that here and now, on the ongoing, in the next email, in the next word, in the next sentence, in the next argument, in the next disagreement, in the next policy, in the next somebody who's a trigger for you. वहां पे उसको इंटीग्रेट करना, उसको मैं एक्चुअलाइजेशन ऐसे एक परिभाषा, मतलब I just use that. I think a lot more people struggle with actualization than realization. And what was emerging for me, and जो बात अपने डॉट की कही बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग लगी मुझे, कि the quantum theory actually talks about the dot and the wave, the particle and the wave. So am I a particle, am I a wave, right?
Yeah.
The moment I describe something, I reduce its potential, its being, into something which is descriptive through words, through indexing, through drawing your, that sense I'm particleizing it. But if I lose sight that it's part of a wave, then there are challenges to it. So वो जो इमर्शन है वो वेव लेड इमर्शन भी है, कि you loosen your grips, and the saying that what you hold holds you, what I hold holds me. So वो जो इंटरग्रिपिंग हो रही है, अब वो इंटरग्रिपिंग आपको इमर्शन नहीं करने देगी
जी.
जब तक आपको हो या एक्शन हो या चेंज नीड्स हो. तब तक आप वो इमर्शन में जाके देख नहीं पाओगे कि ये क्या है, हम क्या है, हम क्यों चाहिए ये जो भी चाहिए। और फिर the only departure that I have is in my small limited practice. I think there is the immersion possible while being individual, isolated, doing some practice. But I also believe that there is immersion and flow experience possible with the other, while in the movement also. दोनों जगह पॉसिबिलिटी है, एक आइसोलेशन में पॉसिबिलिटी है, विड्रॉल में पॉसिबिलिटी है, एक एंगेजमेंट में भी पॉसिबिलिटी है, एक इमर्शन की, जिसको फ्लो एक्सपीरियंस कह सकते हैं।
Today you answered a lot of, it is as if your mind is reading the questions and the answers literally in the nuances of it as well. Like it's almost as if I am having a conversation with myself. Just the words are yours, and that's why it makes me smile so often. It is eerie to the point of being eerie because you're really getting the nuance of the question, but there is no question actually. And there are a lot of unsaid things because of I don't want to overload the question. And you are answering exactly all of those unsaid things. And they are part of the question in my head. So wonderful. As much as I would want that we continue these this conversation in particular, I will hold myself because this has been a heavy conversation for a lot of people to be able to give their time to it. What I will do is that the final question that I'm not asking becomes the topic that we'll speak on later, because that itself seems to be a beautiful one. So thank you so much, Hemant, for your time. And as always, this is a beautiful reflective time and absolutely enjoyable. Is of the sages of old sat down and talked. It is like talking to you is always like that you are trying to build upon and understand one thing that may not be said enough to you. Now that I have a bit of a experience of talking to you on these issues for quite a bit of length of time, 7, 8, 10 episodes, whatever it has been. Uh, your understanding of nuance is only bettering, and kudos to your journey because it is blessing you with better insights and better quality of expression for those insights. So thank you so much for sharing with us whatever you do, and I look forward to speaking to you soon again.
Thank you so much, Bunty, for, I would still call it as co-discovery. Thank you so much.
Thank you.